with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast that reviews one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also write into the show by emailing me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to content at any of our tier levels on a recurring monthly subscription basis, or you can buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section. This week on Patreon, I did immediate reaction recordings for The Fall Guy and Tarot, which we're reviewing tonight as well. And I'm going to have more Patreon stuff coming down the pipeline here soon. So that's available at Patreon. Once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. And later in the show, we'll be talking about Jerry Seinfeld's Netflix movie Unfrosted. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news and review the new horror film Tarot in a non-spoiler and spoiler feature review. And even though he's a Capricorn and I'm a Cancer, since Mercury isn't in retrograde right now, we're safe to welcome back to the show returning guest, writer at MidwestFilmJournal.com, my friend and IFJ colleague, Sam Watermeier. Sam, how's it going?
Good. Well done. That was very amusing.
Thank you. I had to Google if Mercury was in retrograde, and I did not Google what that means either. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I've never known what it means. And the movie didn't really clear it up for me either.
It sure didn't.
But I did tell you that if you were ever going to be reviewing a PG-13 horror movie, I would be here.
Yes.
So I'm living up to my word.
That is it. I was thinking about that. So like we had you on for Imaginary and Night Swim and now Tarot. And this was not the case. This was not the plan. Like the original plan was to review Challengers, and then I just did not get a chance to see it. Like like Saturday I saw the Fall Guy, and then Sunday I saw Tarot, and then I was like, okay, I can see Challengers Sunday, and then I was like, I'm really tired, so I'm just gonna see it after work on Monday, and it's Tuesday night right now, and by Monday night after work, I was like, I am dead to the world. I don't feel like seeing a movie. So by luck of the draw and luck of my laziness, we are reviewing Tarot tonight.
I'm glad, because now we'll have a theme of me coming on for PG-13 horror.
Exactly. I kind of love it. You're like our resident PG-13 horror guy.
And that's such a sad thing to be. I don't know. Is it? I'll make it cool.
It's a necessary thing to be. I would say. Like,
there you go.
Yeah,
that's better.
Someone's got to do it.
That's true.
Yeah. But welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me tonight to talk about these two movies that I rated very similarly in Letterboxd, because we'll talk about it, but Sam, what have you been up to lately? I have a list of things that you've done. You wrote reviews for Unfrosted, Challengers, Sasquatch Sunset, and you also made an appearance on the Medium Cool, a movie podcast, where you talked about The Abyss. So yeah, can you talk about those things and what you've been up to in terms of movie watching or movie reviewing?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take a chance here to plug another podcast. It's called Medium Cool. It's with host Austin Glidden, who, fun fact, was a teaching assistant for one of the film classes I took at Ball State It was the controversial films class. He was an excellent TA. I thoroughly enjoy his show. I think it's kind of kindred with your show. And he's been doing this thing where he revisits movies that he's wanted to get a different perspective on, or give another chance. And to coincide with I think the 35th anniversary of The Abyss,
Nice.
he did a review of that, and that's one of my absolute all-time favorite movies. I luckily got a chance to see it on the big screen for its 4K re-release last winter. I saw it with fellow IFJ members and friends, Evan Dossie and Nick Rogers, and it was just a blast seeing that again. It still holds up for me, at least. I think it's Cameron's best next to T2. So that was fun, and I've reviewed several very different movies for Midwest Film Journal. Sasquatch Sunset is a really odd indie movie.
Yeah.
It kind of, to me, not very effectively, but it kind of mixes like indie art house drama with absurdist comedy. Sometimes it's effective. Sometimes I feel like it kind of struggles to balance those two. What else? Challengers is kind of the big drama out right now. I think on the surface, it's a very entertaining movie. I had some problems with it. I won't go into that, but you can read my review on Midwest Film Journal. Basically, I don't think it's quite as bold as it's been marketed to be, but that's just me. And Unfrosted, which we'll talk about later, but yeesh. I'll just say that for now. But that's I've gotten a chance to see some other old, well, they're not that old, but classics. The 1999 Star Wars Episode 1.
Right.
Another 1999 movie is out right now for a re-release celebrating its 25th anniversary, and that's The Mummy. I got a chance to see both of those on the big screen recently. So I guess we're finally getting old.
Yes.
It was weird to see those again and to realize that it's been that long since they both came out. And that was kind of surreal. I'm starting to feel my mortality a little bit.
Dude, it's bad. Like, I cut my hair today, and like the grays that are in my hair it's bad. It's bad. I've also I'm gonna be 38 in June, and like I think in the past, this is probably TMI, I'm so sorry to everyone, but over the last like month or so, I think I've just grown to be more accepting of the fact that, okay, I'm at the stage now where I'm waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, like clockwork, like literally like clockwork. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But to bring it back to movies, speaking of, I don't know. I can't get out of this. Speaking of toilet water, James Cameron, I'm glad you were able to see James Cameron's Abyss.
It really does hold up. I'll say I think it looks better than a lot of movies today. I mean, maybe that'll make me sound like a bitter geezer, but I really do think visually it holds up.
Yeah, that's one that I need to revisit. I have not seen it in probably like 11 years at this point. And it has always been like, I always have like this kind of stick in my craw about James Cameron. I just don't really gel with him all that well in most of the things that I've seen from him. But The Abyss is like the standout. Like The Abyss has always been in my memory as being like the best of what he's done, in my opinion. But I just haven't revisited it. So anyway, yeah, I will rewatch it eventually. Maybe when Avatar 3 comes out and I refuse to see it. But yeah, while we're kind of talking about theater experiences and everything, what was the I was going to say, what was the experience of episode 1? Did you already say that? Talk about that?
No, not really. I went to one of the earlier showings. I think it was the first showing of the day at like 10:30, and it was kind of an oddly fitting full circle moment because I had first seen it with my dad and my brother when it came out at like the first showing of when the theater opened. And I remember only a couple other people being there, and that was the case this time as well. So it was kind of cool to see it in sort of a similar way. I mean, I kind of wish I had seen it with a big, excited crowd.
Yeah.
But actually, visually, that movie holds up really well.
Interesting.
Also,
yeah.
The opening sequence with, showing off the ships, I thought, wow, these are pretty impressive. Like even 25 years later, like they look so much more organic than a lot of CGI I see now. Like, the ships and feel a little more tactile and than a lot of CG stuff I see. But it's a very odd movie. It's not incredibly well written or acted. But it's still, it has a great momentum to it. I still think it's really exciting.
Sure.
It has some iconic sequences. I found myself getting caught up in the pod race sequence all over again, even though I knew what would happen. Like, I was still tense, and visually I thought that was so cool, and it reminded me of playing Pod Racer on Nintendo 64 as a kid. And like, it was a great sort of trip down memory lane. It was a great, nostalgic experience seeing that again. I think it's probably the best of the prequels.
That's interesting.
Just in terms of the most rewatchable for me.
It's so it's so interesting because I haven't when I've never really been into Star Wars. I love science fiction. I've just never been into Star Wars. I've tried several times over several decades to get into Star Wars. I just can't. The closest I came to it is watching, like, hearing about the prequels, hearing about the first prequel, at least, Phantom Menace. Like, I remember I was a kid and I was at Kings Island with a group, and my friend was telling me, like, scene for scene what happened. And like, I didn't have the context of really knowing Star Wars at that time. So I kind of flirted with watching more Star Wars stuff like throughout high school, but I just never connected to it. But anyway, all that's to say, the thing that I did really connect with is on like PlayStation 1, there was like the Phantom Menace tie-in game. And like, I remember just being so floored by the cutscenes in it, and like where it showed some, I think, actual footage from the movie interspersed with the cutscenes. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, visually, it's really cool. And also, when you said that it looks more organic, I wanted to say that it looks more Bail Organa. So dumb.
Clutch.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, no. And now the time has gone. I don't care about Star Wars. I will say The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie for my taste. Because it's just really well done in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. But I would like to go back in time and see The Phantom Menace in the theater with, like, opening night, because of that, the difference in style and the difference of special effects and visual effects compared from like Return of the Jedi to Episode 1. Like, that jump is like insane. It would be cool to see that in packed theater. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's very strange in the sense that the way it sets up conflict, like the opening crawl and the first sequence are both basically about trade negotiations,
Right?
and like some kind of trade blockade, and like it's all very like bureaucratic stuff. And the movie later on gets kind of lost in that. Like, there's a Senate hearing scene about, trade negotiations, and it's very odd. Like, I guess I didn't really care as a kid, because I was just so like swept up in the visuals and the atmosphere. But like listening to the dialogue and paying attention to the context, I was like, this is weird.
Yeah. And like, I can respect what he was going for with showing, like, the before times of the rebellion and everything. Like, you need that groundwork, and he knew he was going to make a trilogy out of it, so I can understand where he was coming from. I just wish he would have, I don't know, outsourced it to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of, on the surface, it's sort of bold to show that, like, even in this, space world, that there's still, bureaucracy and red tape and kind of boring political issues going on. And I started thinking, like, is this, sort of a criticism of our own government and particularly the Republican Party? And then I thought, maybe I'm maybe I'm reading a little too much into it. But I don't know. That was weird watching as an adult.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I'm glad you got to see it. And so, like I said before, we're going to be reviewing Tarot, which is currently in theaters. But before that, we're going to talk about some news before the reviews. And we are live streaming this episode, and one of our supporters, Carol, has entered the chat. Hey, Carol. She's going back to work though, so thanks for dropping by. And so news before the reviews. We have two news items I want to talk to you about, Sam. The first one is, and I can't remember if I feel like when we reviewed Imaginary, we talked about the 28 years later news. Did we not? Or was that another episode that I did that?
We did. Okay.
I know I've talked about it a couple of times on the podcast, but we got new news on the 28 years later front. Jack O'Connell has joined the cast of the 28 Years Later trilogy from Sony. So he joins already announced cast of Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Ralph Fiennes. And something that I didn't know as well is that Sony has already gotten Nia DaCosta on board to direct the second part of this planned trilogy. I did not know that. And the plan is to have both of those filmed back to back. So, Sam, what do you make of this news about 28 years later?
I actually don't think I had realized it was going to be a new trilogy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That seems to be happening a lot, and you'd think the lesson was learned from The Exorcist. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe let's see how the first one does.
Right.
But I don't know. Like, are studios able to take more risks because of streaming, or like they can always fall back on that if the first one doesn't do well theatrically? I don't really know how streaming works in a financial sense.
I think that it was I think part of that was the reason why we had multiple strikes last year also. Because I feel like people in Hollywood don't know how it works either.
But I mean, I love 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. So I have no reason to not be excited for this one.
I'm glad you say that about 28 Weeks Later, because I'm a defender of that movie.
I think it's great. I think it's sort of like, I mean, this may be a little too hyperbolic, but I think it's kind of the Aliens to 28 Days Later's Alien. It's more
interesting,
more of an action movie, a little more military focused. It's a little faster paced. I like it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting connection to make, because totally, I'm totally on board with that. It really one of the things that I really like about 28 Weeks Later, and then we can get back to talking about 28 Years Later. I'm sorry to sidetrack us from that, but the thing that I really appreciate about 28 Weeks Later is that it is different from 28 Days Later. It is vastly different. It is, like you said, it is Aliens to Alien, or to 28 Days Later's Alien, because it is a different type of movie, and I don't know, I really liked it. Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what 28 years later will do. Sorry.
You're good.
I think and Nia DaCosta, I think, is a great director for it.
I agree.
I loved what she did with Candyman. I thought that was really bold, stylistically, and even, thematically. I thought that movie made some strong statements about, contemporary racism, and so I'm curious what she'll do with the second part of the trilogy. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on board. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And it's funny, you did, like you mentioned, this is happening a lot, like with The Exorcist. It's interesting because I didn't put this in my notes because I completely forgot about it. It's been softly announced, or it's been mentioned, that Mike Flanagan is circling doing the next Exorcist movie, which I love Mike Flanagan with all of my heart. I will see anything he does. I will do, I will follow him to the ends of the earth, to the tower and back. But I just want him to make the Dark Tower. That's what I want him to do. He needs to make the Dark Tower. He needs his plate to be clear so he can make the Dark Tower.
But there was already a Dark Tower movie. I'm just messing with you.
Oh no, it's I've made my
I haven't
peace
even
with
seen
it.
Actually.
You are lucky. No, it's pretty bad. I have a dumb headcanon sort of explanation for why that movie can still exist in the world. But that's more me being I'm just trying to make sense of what the massive disappointment of that movie was. But anyway, Mike Flanagan potentially making the second Exorcist movie. I have faith that he can do a very good job with it, specifically because he did Ouija Origin of Evil. That's a sequel. He did a good job with that. And he's freaking Mike Flanagan. But I don't know. I don't know. I think the first Exorcist was so disappointing that I don't know. I feel like there's some heavy lifting that he'll have to do to really bring my interest into it. What do you make of this news?
Well, it's you mentioned Ouija kind of showing his chops. I would say he was able to take iconic territory and traverse it really well with Dr. Sleep.
Yes, absolutely.
So that gives me confidence in him for The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a franchise I've never not for, lack of interest, but I've never really been terribly interested in seeing that world explored further.
Same.
I think, demonic possession has just been done so many times, and I know so have slashers, but I still get excited for those. But there's something different about demonic possession, though. I feel like it's the typical voice that you usually hear, and the kind of tropes of that genre just don't excite me in a way that the slasher genre does.
I totally agree. I totally agree. There's like, when it comes to slashers are more deeply rooted in fun, like fun with the fear. The Exorcist and demonic possession movies are more about unsettling the viewer and making them feel unsettled. And that just doesn't really equate to fun times for me, I guess. I don't know. But I do want to mention in the chat, a Brent Luthold said, Doc Sleep rules, which I totally agree. But anyway, exorcism movies in general don't really do it for me. And I have no doubt that Mike Flanagan would do a good job of making a compelling and interesting entry in this. I just wish that if he was going to do one of these movies, I wish it wasn't like a desperate gambit from the studio to try to save the money that they spent for the rights. And instead, they should have just given it to him from the beginning and let David Gordon Green appear in the next, I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who did Challengers and, oh my God, I can't remember how to pronounce his name.
Oh, Luca Guadagnino.
Yeah. Just have him pop up in those movies.
Someone's going to give me crap for doing an Italian accent.
Yes.
And just please have mercy.
Yes.
It was a bad decision.
You can troll him at Sam Movie Man on Letterboxd.
Because obviously everyone who's Italian speaks like, it's a me, a Mario.
Yes.
I'm just
reminds
digging
me
a deeper grave for myself.
That reminds me of that great tweet that was Kanye had tweeted something about I would never make a diss track.
Oh yeah.
And someone said, I didn't know he was Italian. That's so great.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all the news that I have. Yeah. Oh, and I did want to mention, you had mentioned that trilogies are all the rage with horror trilogies and everything. The Strangers Chapter 1 is coming out, and I know you're excited for it. I'm excited for it. I can't wait.
Oh, dude, same. I'm stoked. I'm excited for that one because I have no idea how they can make a trilogy out of that, and that
same.
excites me. Yeah, I think this new one just looks really intense and scary, and I can't wait.
Same.
And plus, Rennie Harlan, dude.
Yeah, that's such a weird. I guess not weird, but that's such a. It's an interesting pull, an interesting pull to get him to do it. I don't know what his deal is with it, but yeah, I had tweeted this and posted it, and I was all excited about it because I felt like this is a really clever tweet on my part. But I was I'd said something like, if you had told me that in 2024, if in 2023 you had told me that in 2024 there would be trailers and releases for a movie adaptation of Borderlands, the video game, and a new trilogy of movies set in the Strangers universe, and you were to tell me one of these movies has in the trailer, a song by Cage the Elephant, I would have been like, of course it's Borderlands, because Borderlands, the theme song of that whole game is No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the Elephant. It's very famously the moment that you press play on the video game, that's the opening credits of Borderlands. And no, that is not in the trailer at all. Instead, you've got, I think, Trouble, like a slowed down version of it is played in the Strangers Chapter 1 trailer. And I'm like, I'm so confused by that. Like, it's so weird. But great trailer, though. Yeah. So, Sam, would you like to go into our featured review of the evening, which is for Tarot?
Hell yeah.
All right, let's do it. So again, or for the first time this episode, I guess, we're going to do a non-spoiler and then spoiler review for Tarot, since I could not see Challengers in the theater. So we're going to be reviewing Tarot in a non-spoiler and spoiler review. Once we go into spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer. If you're listening to this after it's released, the show notes have timestamps. Those show notes are available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV427. And I will bring us into the review now as I conceal a burp. So Tarot is in theaters right now. It was released in theaters May 3rd, 2024. And to bring us into this review, I'll read a brief plot summary courtesy of IMDb. And it says, when a group of friends recklessly violates the sacred rule of tarot readings, they unknowingly unleash an unspeakable evil trapped within the cursed cards. One by one, they come face to face with fate and end up in a race against death. Directors for this movie were Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg. Writers were Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg as well. It's based on the novel Horoscope by Nicholas Adams, and the cast includes Harriet Slater, Jacob Batalon, Avantika Vandanapu, Aidan Bradley, Humberly Gonzalez, Wolfgang Novogratz, and Larson Thompson. So Sam, what were your expectations going into Tarot, and how did you feel about it coming out of it?
Expectations were pretty low. I thought, it's a PG-13 horror movie. Those usually aren't great. But actually it pushes against the limits of its rating in pretty surprising ways. It's surprisingly gory. Mm-hmm. It's actually, I at least found it pretty tense and scary. I often found myself thinking like, wow, I really can't believe they're getting away with this with a PG-13 rating. In fact, when I saw it in the theater, we were sitting next to a mother and her daughter who couldn't have been older than 7.
Jeez.
And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I went to movies at that age that, were pretty rough in terms of their content. She was having a ball the whole time.
Nice.
She didn't seem, too scared by it. And we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but her enthusiasm for it kind of made me realize like this is a good, I think you called it, it's a good gateway horror movie.
Yep.
Like this is, like a slightly harder edged Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like I appreciated it in that sense. And coming out of some recent PG-13 horror movies, particularly Imaginary, Night Swim, and Five Nights at Freddy's, I found this one pretty refreshing because unlike those, it doesn't lean so heavily on this kind of dreary drama. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a great comic relief character, and I found it pretty refreshing in comparison to those. It doesn't try too hard to kind of be elevated horror, and I enjoyed it.
That's really good to hear. I didn't enjoy it, but the more I've come away from it, and especially after like hearing that anecdote about the little girl in your audience, like that's what when you had mentioned that before, previous to recording, like it kind of crystallized something in my brain that, yeah, I'm not the audience for this type of horror movie. Like, I'm just not. I'm in my late 30s, and I'm not someone who is of the demographic that this is being catered toward. And like viewing it as like a gateway horror movie and being like a gateway horror entry does make me appreciate it a little bit more, even if I can't really bring myself to praise it anywhere else all that much. Mostly because, like, I remember, and it's funny because I never really considered it to be like from viewing it from the lens of gateway horror, except for the fact, or despite the fact that throughout the entire movie, I was thinking, like, I was very snarky in my thinking that this is basically like, if this had come out in like 2001 or 2002, this would be like the urban legend to like the way that urban legend was kind of a quick response to Scream and the success of Scream. This would be like that for Final Destination, because it feels very much like Final Destination. It's just like, okay, well, we can't do death looming over other people or looming over people trying to take them out. So let's just throw tarot cards into it and then put the Final Destination plot over its skeleton. But what's interesting is that, like, even making that comparison, I didn't think about how those were gateway horror movies for me. Those were movies that got me interested in the genre, interested in movies in Scream's case. And like, there's something very special about that. And it's very special about being of a young age where you're watching something that you're probably too young to watch and just experiencing this experience of just knowing that there's more out there than what you're seeing day to day in movies and entertainment. And like, there's something to that. Having said that, I hope that this movie works that way for kids these days, but as its own movie, I was very just rolling my eyes throughout most of it because it just felt very, very formulaic and very, very pigeonholed to a very specific formula that it's not even that it was predictable. It was more like hitting the check boxes of like, okay, now they need to do this and that and this and that. And it's just like, okay, we already did this. Like, you're being redundant about this. So why not just do this instead? I don't know. It was frustrating to me.
Yeah. I can understand that frustration, especially because the characters are picked off pretty much exactly as they're predicted to be.
I almost laughed out loud in the theater the second that I saw the instrument with which the first victim dies because of the card reading, and I was like, wait, this character, like this, they said these words in the tarot reading. Oh, is this really what we're going to be doing this whole movie? Like, just like shoehorning in this prop, like, okay, it just felt very, very awkward.
I will say though, as predictable as that was, the murder weapon you're talking about, it was pretty surprising for me, at least, how graphic the violence was.
I will agree with you there. There is a level of pushing of the envelope of PG-13 that I was not expecting from this, and it was kind of it's a little few and far between. Like, there are a couple of like spurts of like blood that I wasn't expecting here and there, and like, I was kind of all for it. I thought it was really cool. It was like a bloodier, given the way that everything is set up, it was like a more bloody sort of vibe of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Did you watch that when it came out?
I did, yeah.
Nice.
That's a good comparison, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that movie because the characters were really good. And this movie felt like they did not really, like, it was so one-dimensional, like all of the characters, like here's the thing, and this is the very snarky thing that I said on Patreon, and the very snarky thing I'm going to say here is that the beginning of the movie, the movie just throws us right into it, that this group of friends, there's 7 of them, they're all having a weekend at an Airbnb in the Catskills, I think, and they are like very much a close-knit group of characters. They are all college students. They're celebrating one's birthday. And then the way the movie introduces us to them is just very scant dialogue throughout. And then it's like, okay, we have a problem. We don't have any alcohol. Let's find alcohol. We find tarot cards. Oh no, let's do tarot readings. That whole sequence, like, I could not shake this feeling that the movie felt like I was watching the feature-length version of a movie that characters in a real movie are watching in the background of scenes. Like, it felt so weird how, like, sloppily done and how goofy the circumstances were. It just felt very inorganic. It felt very Bale inorganic. But no, it felt very, very just forced, really. Very, I'm not going to make a forced joke. But no, it just felt very just haphazard.
I will say, and part of me kind of like hates myself for defending this movie, but I will say that the beginning did subvert my expectations in the sense that, unlike most horror movies, it doesn't open with some big scare.
Sure. Yeah.
It opens with some college students just hanging out. It's very breezy. There is a pretty extensive tarot reading scene that basically leads into the opening credits. And it's a very long delayed title card.
Yeah, like almost 20 minutes.
Yeah. I will say that was pleasantly surprising to me.
I agree.
It didn't open with, some big kill or something like that. And I guess it just had enough of those moments of subverting my expectations that I appreciated it. I mean, the characters are like razor thin. I mean, the only one who has like a distinct personality is the comic relief character Paxton.
Yeah. Who's also the most notable actor in the bunch. He was in the Spider-Man movies as Ned.
Right.
Yeah.
And he, I will say I did appreciate his character because he kind of like pulls the audience away for a second to make fun of what's going on. He's kind of like the Scream's Jamie Kennedy of the group. I guess I wish that the other characters, I made the Scream comparison, but the difference between this and Scream is that Scream has other interesting characters.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they try to do that Scream thing of just having a focus on a group of characters that are friends. And, like, for the most part, they do a decent job of showing that they need to do that. But it just doesn't land all that well. So by the time you get, these characters getting in mortal danger, like, you have to contend with the fact that they're not developed well enough, so you don't inherently care too deeply about them. And I think part of that is because the point where you need to have them set up or have them like developed is kind of occupied by them doing tarot card reading, and doing basically exposition dumps for the rest of the movie to kind of give us an idea of what is going to happen. And I think the absence of being able, like, trying to juggle doing the exposition of tarot card reading with giving us information on the characters is just too much for the audience of a PG-13 horror movie. It needs to, too much attention that needs to be paid. Not that it's too hard to follow. It's just, there's a lack of desire to follow it because of the type of movie it is, I guess. I don't know if that's prejudice against a certain type of movie, but I don't know. It just felt like it was a little bit too much of heavy lifting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be different if the tarot reading exposition was more complex than it is. Like, it's pretty thin. Like, the readings are pretty vague. You know, one character is stubborn. One character is, you know, surprisingly sensitive. One character is, you know, creative. And it's like, they're all pretty... It would be different if the exposition that came out were interesting and gave little bits of backstory that intrigued us, but they really don't paint the characters any more interestingly than, you know, a horoscope in the back of a newspaper would.
Right.
And, you know, yeah, so I will admit that.
Yeah, and the movie was also originally titled Horoscope, which was the name of the book that it's based on. And I'm going to go on record and say that's a terrible title. Like, I much prefer tarot. It's straightforward. But when it also comes to, like, obviously we'll talk about this in spoilers, which we can kind of wind down and go into spoilers here in a bit. But when it gets to the extra exposition dump of like, oh, why is this the case? Why are these tarot cards evil? Why, like, what's this? Like, I hadn't checked out of it, but I was just like, I don't care. Like, it's not effective enough. The movie at this point has not been effective enough to warrant my appreciation of this type of just kind of shoehorned in backstory. And it just felt very awkward the way that some of the dialogue is done. Like, there's one part where I mentioned this on Patreon, but there's one part where it's after someone has died, and it's kind of ushering in the third act of the movie, and a character says, this person died according to their tarot reading. And I'm like 10 or 15 minutes ago, we already established that. Like, you don't need to reset and tell the audience, like, this is what's happening. You had an entire scene where you guys figured that out. Like, why edit in this one? Was it literally just to keep it like below, like to keep it above 90 minutes in the runtime? Because I don't understand why you needed to reiterate that 10 or 15 minutes after it was established. It was just very hokey and weird. But then again, that can also go into, you know, it being kind of geared toward kids, and a gateway horror type of way. So maybe you need that. I don't know, but it bothered me. That's a small nitpick on my part.
Yeah, I also, going back to the opening sequence for a second, I do think it's also a lot to ask people to sit through 7 tarot readings.
Yes.
I mean, at one point I found myself thinking like, shit, I don't know if I'm going to remember all of this.
Oh my God, me too.
And
again,
you know, that's...
I'm old. I'm waking up in the middle of the night to go take a leak every night. Like, I can't remember 7 different tarot readings.
Well, and especially as vague as they are. It's like, that's where it would have been better if the characters had some colorful backstory other than, you know, being the stubborn one or, you know, the sensitive one. You really don't learn anything about their lives except for the main character. You learn a little bit about her past, which is also very generic,
shoehorned in trauma. And then you also have her relationship with the other guy that it's established that they broke up. And like, that's interesting drama, especially like teen or I guess early 20s drama. Like that's really good effective stuff, but like when you have that established, and it's an interesting kind of crosscut of the scene of them talking to their friends, and it's different perspectives on the breakup. That's fun. That's a fun little cheeky kind of thing. But then when you bombard us with 7 tarot readings, it's like, yeah, that relationship drama, that backstory about her mom, like all that just gets pushed aside because you have to do homework for the next 10 minutes before the opening title card of the movie. It just seems very disjointed and asking kind of a lot of an audience that shouldn't be asked a lot in this type of movie.
Yeah, that's fair. You're starting to make me question like why I even like this.
Your
thing.
hardcore defense of this movie, your 5-star rating, like your Letterboxd review is better than The Abyss.
Yeah, you'd think I'd have a stronger argument.
Yeah.
I get, and maybe that is like my only defense is that I found it refreshing in comparison to these crappy movies. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I totally get that, because one of the big issues with Night Swim is that it's very heavy in the drama, and like, while I liked the kind of baseball backstory of Night Swim, it is very much disjointed by kind of formulaic horror tropes and everything. And here we don't have like that. We don't have as prominent a backstory or drama or anything. This is more of a gateway horror movie that is wearing itself wearing itself on its sleeve, wearing its heart on its sleeve, I guess. And it's just doing its thing, which I can appreciate. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I guess I enjoyed it more in fits and spurts. Like a few sequences I found effective. Like there's one with a magician. And, you know, the classic sawing through the box trick. I thought that scene had a pretty effectively spooky atmosphere, and and to me it was tense. I found the magician scary. Like it has effective little vignettes of horror that kept me interested. There's a sequence with a jester character in an elevator that I found engaging and, you know, spooky enough. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't stand out in any sort of major way from most PG-13 horror movies. Yeah, I liked it enough.
Yeah, I can understand that. I didn't, but I respect your opinion. Do you want to go into a spoiler discussion about this movie? So we can kind of talk in a little bit more detail. There's a couple of things I want to bring up in spoilers. It doesn't need to be an extensive spoiler.
Sure,
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we go into spoilers for Tarot?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. What did you end up rating it on Letterboxd for those who are going to skip the spoiler section?
I gave it a 3, which to me is like, you know, watchable. I had a decent time. Maybe I give too many 3-star ratings. I don't know.
No, that's totally fine.
So yeah.
Nice. I rated it 1.5 stars. Oh, and I had a funny anecdote that I shared on Patreon, but I'll bring it in. I'll bring us into spoilers and then share that anecdote. So we're gonna go into spoilers for Tarot. It's currently in theaters. If you're on the live stream and you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and click away or what have you. But yeah, we're going to be going into spoilers for Tarot. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're spoiling the movie.
It's an unspoken rule not to use somebody else's cards.
Who cares? Who's going first?
Follow my rule to stay out of danger.
Hello?
You're never to deal with a decorator.
Okay, so the funny anecdote that I had about tarot, I'm watching the live stream right now, and I just took a big drink of water. I didn't realize that it was going to be on me. But anyway, Jesus. So, spoilers on for tarot. Don't know how extensive we're going to go with this, but I did want to share a quick anecdote. I shared this on Patreon, but when I went to the theater, like usually at AMC, like I can't get any service in my seat. So like when, for instance, when I send like occasionally, I'll send a message into like our group chat that we're in. I'll be like, hey, I'm going to be reviewing this movie. If anyone wants to join me on Obsessive Viewer, then I'll send it and then put my phone away. And then like halfway through the movie, I'll kind of glance at, like, I won't turn on my phone, but I'll glance at like the always on display and be like, that probably hasn't even sent yet. But anyway, so, and that's why no one's responding. But no, I got in my seat and I had like bars on my phone. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm looking and I'm like, I'll get a head start on adding tarot to my lists on Letterboxd. So like I have a list for like theater viewings and 2024 releases that I've seen. And so I did that, having not really known much about it, not knowing much about the reactions to it. And then I looked on Letterboxd and I saw that my friend Mike, who is one of the OG co-hosts of the podcast, his like review was scathing. And like he is a horror aficionado. He is someone who like he knows all about horror. Like it's insane. But like I saw that he had rated it, I think 1 star. And he had said, horrible, triumphantly stupid. I can't believe this didn't go straight to Hulu. Bad story, bad script, terrible performances. And he goes on from there. And I was just like, I was in my seat and I was like, what did I just get myself into? So that's the anecdote about that. There was something I was going to say in spoilers. Oh, can we talk about Paxton, the comic relief character, and how kind of dumb that whole lead up to him rescuing them at the end was? Like, how did you feel about that whole ending?
I kind of liked it.
Okay.
It, like, to me, it was a relief. I was like, oh, good. That's a fun ending. And then I did actually appreciate how there's kind of a like record scratch moment where the characters say, wait, how did you survive? And it goes back to a line about his roommate that I actually found pretty funny.
That's really interesting. Okay.
So, like, to me, it kind of tied everything together really nicely. He introduces his roommate in a funny way.
Mm-hmm.
I won't explain further than that because I can't. And then, it goes back to his roommate rescuing him in the elevator when he's seemingly about to be killed by this jester.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the ending where the characters kind of disrupt what's happening to ask him how he possibly survived, that was another like funny moment to me that stood out and as an example of the movie not taking itself too seriously. So I liked it. That's
fair. I just felt like it was too lazy. Like it was just like, again, because, and we're in spoilers just for those in the live stream, but we're in spoilers for tarot, and the way that it's like the tarot card reading, that was such detriment to the suspense of the movie for me. Like I knew that he was not going to die in the elevator because of the tarot reading, because the tarot reading is like, yeah, you come through for your friends. Like you're surprisingly supportive. And then he even says like the line during the tarot reading, like, oh yeah, you guys are going to be surprised when I come through in the clutch. And I'm like, okay, so he's gonna like, that's gonna be the thing that happens at the end of the movie. And it does. It is what happens. It doesn't matter because it's after the fact. It's after everything. He doesn't come through. Like he's saving them a mile walk. That's about it. And he's saving them a mile walk in a scene that is basically lifted from Get Out.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And then the record scratch moment where they're like, oh, we need to explain like what happened. And he just explains, like, that just felt like, okay, at least I'm not going to be annoyed by that lingering plot hole. And like, it just felt very perfunctory. So I don't know.
Yeah, it isn't like the triumphant rescue that you expect. And I guess maybe I found some humor in that. That it's like it lands like kind of a dud, like he just happens to pick them up.
Yeah.
I think that's, I admit that's giving it maybe a little too much credit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I enjoyed it.
And that's fair. And like you said, the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. And maybe I'm taking it a little more seriously than I should. But it just felt like because I was expecting it throughout the entire movie, because the movie explicitly tells us what happens, it just felt like it just took any kind of wind out of the sails for me.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to ask this because I couldn't find anything to corroborate this, but did you get the sense that this was like a COVID movie? Like a pandemic filmed movie? Because about halfway through the movie, around the time that Paxton is going back to the dorm, to campus, like in that very just, in my opinion, very forced, like, oh, I'm going home. Like I like very much just like, we need to get him out of the group and we need to get him to a place. It didn't make sense, like why his character would do that for me. But anyway, around that point, I was like, I don't think there's been like a single like extra. Like, I don't like, granted, a lot of it's filmed at night, but like, this is like a campus. This is a college campus. And like, there's no one like anywhere. Like, even when he goes into the dorm, like the person at the desk has a sign up that says, be back soon or something. And I'm like, was this filmed like in 2021 and then shelved until 2024? Like, because it feels like, oh, we can't have extras in the scenes because of COVID protocols. Like, did you get that vibe at all?
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because right before we started recording, I was reading a review that addresses that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I'll read the little bit of it.
Yeah.
It says, other than the Catskills as the site of the haunted mansion, where do these college students live? Not only are their supposed dorms completely empty of other people, roommates are spoken about but never seen, and background extras are non-existent, but they're all creaky, dark, and run down. It is weird because like the first character to die goes to her dorm and it's empty, and she says something about them
like going out to party.
Yeah, and then Paxton's dorm is like suspiciously empty.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that kind of added to the spooky atmosphere.
Sure.
It was weird that it wasn't explained.
Yep.
And yeah, it does seem like even when they're out on the town, like no one's around.
Yeah.
That is weird. I do wonder if it was a COVID production, but to me, it was sort of effective in the sense that in horror movies, it does seem like no one's around.
Yeah, that's fair. It is very isolating. It is very isolating for them. I'll agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this the ladder, like, I literally almost laughed out loud the second that I saw the ladder and was like, oh my God, she even said something about climbing the ladder. And then later, after she's dead, Elise, I think, or I think Elise is the main character, or Haley. She's like, I even said something about the ladder, and I'm like, that's literally what I just thought. Like, what I would like verbatim what I just thought. She just said something about a ladder. Like, it felt very just hokey and awkward. And then one part that I did, like, in the moment I kind of groaned and rolled my eyes was when the one guy is being led toward the train tracks. I think it's him. But when he is in that kind of restricted area and like the phantom tarot card reader person puts like a in a very Freddy Krueger way, puts a newspaper at his feet, and like he steps on it and it's like drenched in water or something, but it says like horoscope, like the horoscope is you die today, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I watching? But
yeah, and it's almost as if they have so many characters just so there are enough kill sequences, like just to fill the movie with horror set pieces. Because you do wonder, like, do we need 7 characters?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they're all just kind of, it's basically like watching them just sort of picked off one by one, which I guess I had fun with as someone who just likes horror set pieces, but I can understand how, like, to someone who's not a hardcore horror fan, how that would be tedious.
Yeah, and to the movie's credit, there are some pretty good set pieces. Like you said, the magician sequence is probably my favorite sequence in the whole movie. I do wish that it was a little bit more. I wish that the other set pieces were as polished as that, because that seemed like it was a little bit more heightened in terms of design. I mean, you have like a whole audience of ghouls in the audience there, and I thought that was very effective and very cool. So to its credit, there are some pretty impressive sequences that held my attention, but I could not tell you if I will ever watch this movie again or think about it after I hit publish on this episode.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess it had enough for me in terms of, you know, creative set pieces and humor, and you know, I think it's a decent horror movie to kind of throw on TV as background noise. You know, so I'll give it that ringing endorsement.
Yeah, that's fair. I could maybe see throwing it on in the background. It'd be fun to have like just a day. Maybe it'll be something I watch during like Shocktober, where I'll watch, just throw stuff in the background when I'm, I don't know, working from home or when I'm just bored. It could be in league with some other kind of easy PG-13 horror movies. So yeah, we'll see. Any other thoughts on Tarot? Or any parting thoughts on the movie? Would you want to see Tarot 2?
You know, I'm such a sucker. I would see Tarot 2, and I would come on to review it.
Nice.
I mean, I'm very easily pleased when it comes to horror. Like, even the opening of this movie, it, you know, opens with friends chatting around a campfire. I was like, oh, you know, I'm home. This is comforting to me.
Nice.
Like, I'm maybe too easily entertained, but yeah, I was a big target for this one.
That's totally fair. And if there is a Tarot 2, I will commit myself to watching it, and I'll have you on to review it. That's my
Thank you.
solemn pledge here. That's what the cards are saying in front of me right now. So that's our review of Tarot. Stay tuned, because we're going to go into our secondary review of the evening, where we're going to talk about Unfrosted. I keep wanting to say Jerry Springer, but Jerry Seinfeld's directorial debut. But before we go into that, really quick, Sam, where can people find you online? And then I'll go into my whole spiel before I bring us into the next review.
You can find my written reviews at midwestfilmjournal.com. I'm on Letterboxd under the handle Sam Movie Man. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Nice. All right. Well, that is our review of Tarot. And before we get to our secondary review of the evening, I do want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast's YouTube channel as well, where I'm posting more and more videos and live streams of podcasts, much like this episode right now is being live streamed to 2 people right now, one of which being me having it loaded to look at the chat. And also, if you're interested in starting your own podcast, you can go to Libsyn.com, where I host all 3 of my podcasts, and I have for over a decade. If you use the promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free, depending on when you sign up during the month, and we'll get a commission on it as well. So more details on that are in the show notes of this episode. Once again, it's promo code OBSESS at Libsyn.com. And now back to the show. I'm going to play a little jingle from, actually, I'll play a clip from the trailer for Unfrosted, and then I'll bring us into our review. So here we go. Clip from Unfrosted, and then we'll do a non-spoiler review.
In the early 1960s, the American morning was defined by milk and cereal. And the 2 undisputed giants of the cereal world were Kellogg's and Post.
Major news from the breakfast world. The Post Cereal Company has reportedly invented a shelf-stable fruit pastry breakfast product.
No.
Yeah.
Boy.
It's Post. They did it.
I'm about to finally crush that big red K that never stops glaring at me. How do you think Post did it?
There's always a surprise inside the box.
Okay, and Unfrosted is currently streaming on Netflix. The premise, according to IMDb, is in 1963 Michigan, business rivals Kellogg's and Post compete to create a cake that could change breakfast forever. Director for this movie was Jerry Seinfeld, making his directorial debut. Writers were Jerry Seinfeld, Spike Feresten, Andy Robin, and Barry Marder. Cast includes Jerry Seinfeld, Melissa McCarthy, Jim Gaffigan, Max Greenfield, Hugh Grant, Amy Schumer, Peter Dinklage, Christian Slater, Bill Burr, Dan Levy, James Marsden, Jack McBrayer, Thomas Lennon, Bobby Moynihan, and everyone else in comedy. So Sam, we'll probably do just non-spoiler thoughts on Unfrosted. What did you think of Unfrosted, and what are your thoughts on Jerry Seinfeld? His weird anti-woke tangents that has gotten some press lately?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, so please,
Yes.
bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like we need to address his anti-woke statements, because he made them during the promotion of this movie.
Yep.
Which I feel is very strange timing that I kind of have to comment on. So I think it's very weird to say that movies are over, the movie business is over, and that comedy is dead because people are too easily offended, and, woke culture is suppressing comedy. I think those are strange things to say before releasing a movie about Pop-Tarts.
Yes.
There's really nothing remotely edgy about this movie. It's a dorky dad joke of a movie. Like, all the humor is kind of groan-worthy. You know, a lot of one-liners that are like so innocent that they're kind of offensive in their innocence. It's like, you know, let's be a little bolder. The fact that Netflix is letting movies like this exist should tell Jerry Seinfeld that the movie business is far from over.
Yeah.
Because I think you know, a movie about the origin of Pop-Tarts is showing that studios are willing to take a risk on quirky stuff that you wouldn't expect people would want to watch.
Yeah. You can make anything a movie now.
Right. Like, look at all these product movies, like the Beanie Bubble, or you know, there was a movie, Blackberry. There was a movie about Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
Yes.
Like, I don't think the movie business is over.
No. Oh God, our friend, I think Brent coined something. I can't remember what, like, it was like product pick or something, like prod pick, like biopic, but for products. I'm not sure. But yeah, or maybe it was Mitch. I don't know. But anyway, Brando picks, because brand picks. But yeah, but it's so weird that he went on that tangent about not being able to do edgy comedy. And a lot of the responses to it have been like, well, It's Always Sunny has been on the air for over a decade now. Like, they're doing fine.
Right.
Which is, that exists in such an interesting, like, bubble. A beanie bubble, if you will. But no, that exists in a bubble because, in such an interesting bubble, because It's Always Sunny is like, it's like Seinfeld on crack. It's such a weird, like, kind of extension of what Seinfeld kind of represented in the 90s, like unlikable, neurotic characters. And now It's Always Sunny is like just despicable, like people that are really funny. So I don't know. But anyway, but yeah, it's weird that he would go the whole like anti-woke thing. I wouldn't have thought that Jerry Seinfeld would be someone to talk about how pigeonholed comedy is these days. It's a weird take.
It also doesn't make sense coming from him, considering how innocent his humor has always been.
Yeah.
Like, one of his first stand-up bits was about Life cereal. And, you know, he's known as the what's the deal with
right
so-and-so guy. I mean, he talks about stuff like, why can't you have cereal for dinner? And
right.
That's especially funny considering some recent Kellogg's news that came out about their CEO suggesting cereal as a dinner option.
Jesus
for families.
Christ. Yeah.
He said something about, like, you know, in these
hard times,
economic times, families should consider cereal for dinner, and you know, he was raked over the coals for that, as he should have been.
Absolutely.
As just someone who's so out of touch with you know, contemporary America. And that in itself would have made for kind of an interesting comedy.
Yeah.
About, you know, painting Kellogg's as this greedy corporation that seems innocent on the surface, you know, making breakfast products for children. But of course, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't go that route with it. He, you know, makes a very PG rated comedy about the absurdity of, you know, these executives trying to come up with cereal as if they're trying to put a man on the moon.
Right.
You know, takes place in the 60s amid the space race, and It's kind of a parody of like The Right Stuff. It tells the story of the origins of Pop-Tarts in the same way as, you know, the fight between the Americans and the Soviets to get to space. And like, I guess that's a funny concept. It's a funny concept for maybe a sketch.
Yes.
I don't know about a feature length comedy.
Yeah.
And you know, this movie isn't without some funny bits, but I just got the sense that Jerry Seinfeld, and I've, you know, despite loving him for mostly the sitcom Seinfeld, but despite loving him, I think he always seems to care more about just getting the laugh than really getting anything deeper than that. And that's kind of what bothers me about his comedy. I think there's more to comedy than just getting a laugh. You know, there's, you know, a laugh of recognition that you get from seeing people at their most human. And I think Seinfeld often proved that, but I'm not sure Jerry Seinfeld really cared. I think that was more Larry David's doing. But I don't know, this movie just felt like nothing but punchlines. Like it didn't really have interesting characters behind them. And I guess that's what was kind of off-putting to me about it.
Yeah, I'll agree with pretty much everything you said. Also, I do think that there is different layers to comedy as well. There's a specificity to delivering something with like great comedic timing, like saying Bale Organic when like talking about the visual effects of Star Wars. But no, there's something that I feel like we've been inundated over the years with these types of like brand specific like origin stories that run the gamut from comedy to drama to hyper drama to like less serious drama, but like it runs the gamut of different genres. So like we've been inundated with that, and it has gotten to a point where it's so oversaturated that when someone makes something like this for Pop-Tarts, even with it being demonstrably like in a completely different reality, like from the outset, I've seen this compared to just being like a live action cartoon. It is 100% like slapstick, weird, heightened reality. You're not supposed to take it seriously. Even in that hyper reality, nothing lands for me except for one, like there's one sequence, one joke that I like that perked my ears up, and that's credit to Bill Burr as JFK. It's the whole ask not joke. That bit I thought was like not genius, but like it was very effective. I thought that is good. That is a very good, well-constructed joke, and I appreciated it. And I wish that there was something else like that in this movie. There's one thing that we won't, I would rather we not spoil because it is a spoiler. It's a cameo. Which that in of itself is not a spoiler because there are cameos in every single scene just about. But there's one cameo of a pair of people that kind of blew my mind a little bit, even though the thing that it's satirizing or it's sending up is something I wasn't a fan of. I just thought it was a very interesting get for that. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, Sam?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
And kudos to you for not spoiling it. Unfortunately, Netflix has spoiled it.
Oh, really?
By just releasing that clip, like in its entirety. And I'm like,
that's
you're giving
lame.
away the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
But I won't spoil it either. But that is one of the few effective moments. If only because those characters are coming from a much better piece of entertainment.
Right.
It's like they kind of heighten the material
Mhm.
because of that.
The movie turns into like a scene from something else. And yeah.
I've heard some people say that if Jerry Seinfeld weren't the main character, then maybe this movie would be better. I'm not really sure that's the case. I don't think his character is really all that nuanced.
No.
In the sense that a different actor would make a difference. I
really wish that I could remember where I saw this. It could have been in our chat. It could have been on Letterboxd. It could have been on Twitter. But I can't attribute it to whoever said it, but it stood out to me. I don't even think I read the full sentence really, but just the beginning of it was, why give a comedian who is so famously a bad actor the chance to direct himself as the lead in a movie? Because Jerry Seinfeld is a lot of things. He has his legacy. Seinfeld's great, all that. He is a bad actor. He as a performer of scripted comedy, he does not do a good job consistently. And to have him direct himself in the act of doing something that has years proven he is not good at is not a good recipe for a good leading man. It's a little bit distracting.
While I agree with that, I think he kind of has to be in it because I think part of the joke, and this shows how weak a joke it is, but I think part of the joke is Jerry Seinfeld making a movie about Pop-Tarts. And I think seeing him, he's clearly pleased with himself in every scene.
Yeah.
And almost laughing at his own jokes. To me, that's kind of the charm that the movie's trying to have. I agree that it's pretty weak in that sense, but it goes back to my point about this movie not having much going for it beyond its kind of groan-worthy one-liners.
Yeah.
I think Jerry Seinfeld just had a lot of material on this subject matter, and this is him milking it for all it's worth, pun intended.
Yes.
It's I don't know. It doesn't feel like a real movie.
It doesn't. And that's something else that I kind of thought about after the movie ended, was that, and I put this very snarky comment in my Letterboxd review, but basically, I opened my Letterboxd review with, yeah, Jerry, I saw Weird the Al Yankovic Story too. It was good. Because this feels so much like what they did successfully with the Weird Al Yankovic movie a couple of years ago on Roku. That I thought did this thing so well in terms of sending up a whole genre of movie, having a very prominent subject to the at its center, and then doing just bit after bit of heightened comedy, surreal comedy. Weird the Al Yankovic Story was phenomenal at that. And this feels like it is a pale imitation of what they did with Weird the Al Yankovic Story. And this feels like it is trying so hard to be a unique, whimsical comedy, but nothing is there for me to really latch onto aside from one scene with JFK and one scene with 2 cameos. It just felt very try hard. to me.
Yeah, and I feel like the humor it's trying to create out of the origin of Pop-Tarts is kind of outdated. Like, it's basically trying to say, like, look how absurd it is that these two companies were competing to create this silly product. It's like, we see that all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we've seen Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yes.
You know, we've seen a world that has created all sorts of silly products. Like, it's not very funny anymore.
Right.
I think Jerry Seinfeld is about 30 years late with this movie.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think if he made this in the 90s, it could have been amazing if it were written by the duo that wrote Ed Wood and The People versus Larry Flint. They were kind of big at the time and sort of known for, you know, taking kind of unlikely subjects and making biopics out of them. And I think, you know, if this movie were made in like 1996, I think it could have been incredible.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, now I think it falls pretty flat.
I agree. I agree. Do you want to see Jerry Seinfeld direct anything else?
No, not really.
And aside from this and B movie, do you want to see him in any movies?
No, not really. Okay. Well, and that's another thing. Like, B movie is his only other movie, and I think it, if I remember correctly, it's about a bee suing humans because they're using honey or something.
I never saw it, but I think that I've gotten that plot from it, something like that. I just remember there's a romantic subplot with a human that's weird.
Yeah. I think it has something to do with honey, and like, it's a chuckle-worthy joke. Like, that's a dad joke, and he's got to stop basing movies on lame dad jokes.
Yeah.
Dude.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're not that funny.
Here's the thing. I would love to see Jerry Seinfeld in one more movie, if only because our friends Andy and Logan at Odd Trilogies will be able to have an odd trilogy of Jerry Seinfeld movies. Like, that's the sole reason I would want to see him in another movie.
I'd like to see him at least maybe try to comment on a product that's current.
Yes.
I mean, like, Pop-Tarts? Who the fuck cares?
Yeah. It's such an uninteresting subject. And, like, the movie doesn't do enough to make it an interesting subject. Like, everything surrounding this movie is this heightened reality of quirky characters and just insane, absurdist humor that doesn't land. But the actual core of it, the actual story of the invention of Pop-Tarts, is not compelling or interesting. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not interesting.
And plus, like, this is barely based on a true story.
Right.
Like, it takes the basic idea that Post and Kellogg's both competed to get this product out and basically fills the rest with pure fiction. And it's like I said before, like, two companies competing for a silly breakfast pastry. Like, is that really that funny?
Right.
And you know, I don't think Jerry Seinfeld's humor is above my head. I'm not going to say that. I think he just finds a little too much humor in these sort of mundane things.
Yep.
And doesn't do enough to really prove why they're funny.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Any parting thoughts on Unfrosted? Where do you see the breakfast pastry cinematic universe going next? Who do you want to direct the Toaster Strudel movie?
Hopefully nowhere. I don't think any more needs to be done.
Same. And what did you rate this? And where would you? How much better? I don't know if I'm speaking grammatically correct. How much more better? How much more gooder do you think it is than The Abyss?
This is like not even comparable to The Abyss. The Abyss is a fucking masterpiece. I think, at least. Unfrosted, I think I'm being generous and giving it 2 stars. I could probably go lower. I thought this movie was... Here's the thing. It's terrible. I wasn't seething with anger while I was watching it, though. I chuckled a few times. Like, I think it's lame, but it's about as lame as, like, listening to your uncle tell, dorky jokes. Like, it's inoffensively bad.
For some reason, I was so afraid you were going to say it's as bad as listening to your podcast.
Oh no, I would never.
I believe you that you would never, but for some reason I was just like, oh my God, where is he going with this? I'm going to have to find someone else to review Tarot 2 with me. Damn it.
Oh no. No. It's like Jerry Seinfeld's an old guy and he's clearly having fun telling these lame ass jokes.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't help but be a little charmed by how pleased he is with, it's like, ooh, Jerry made a funny. I wrote in my review that this almost feels like his smart-ass response to woke culture. He's like, oh, well, if I can't, do anything edgier, then I'm going to make a colorful movie about Pop-Tarts. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where he throws his own set by walking out in suspenders and saying, hey, everybody, who's ready to laugh?
Man, I wish that there was that much depth to this movie. I would be so on board with that if that was like the intention of it, which I don't think it was, but I love that read of it though.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's reaching this level, but during the Comedy Central roast of Bob Saget years ago, Norm Macdonald did a set that was like nothing but really harmless, innocent, dorky dad jokes. And he was kind of like, subverting expectations that he would tell raunchy jokes, which everyone tends to do on those roasts. And I wish Jerry Seinfeld were doing that with this movie, but I think he genuinely finds this stuff funny, and that's a little lame.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Who knows what product will come out next in terms of the movie treatment that is happening to everything. Who knows what's to come? I think that's it for our review of Unfrosted. Sam, do you want to do a quick potpourri section, or we can call it a night? Anything that's popped out that you've seen lately that you want to talk about? I know we kind of talked about that at the beginning of the episode.
If you do, otherwise I'm fine calling it a night.
Okay, yeah, I've got nothing. I finished season 7 of 24, and much like the end of that season, I've got nothing to say. Like it's just I'll talk more about 24 again once I finish season 8, rewatching it. But anyway, I finished season 7. It's on Hulu. Okay, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. To those that joined in the live stream, thank you. Carol, Brent, and Paige all commented in it, and I really appreciate that. So, Sam, before we go, once again, where can people find you online? And do you have any writing projects or anything coming up that you're going to be reviewing soon, or what have you?
You can find me at midwestfilmjournal.com for more thoughts on Unfrosted if you're interested. I feel like I pretty much said them all. You can find me on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man. I'll be reviewing I Saw the TV Glow next week.
Nice.
I'm really excited about that one. Midwest Film Journal has a few exciting series coming up. I think our next one is on Meryl Streep.
Yep. I'm on deck to review one of her movies that I know you're a huge fan of that honestly I haven't seen yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
What is that?
Let's just say that by writing it, I may be defending my life.
Well done.
Thank you.
Oddly enough, the one I'm covering inspired a Seinfeld joke.
Oh.
It's the movie about the line, maybe the dingo ate your baby.
Oh, nice.
It's where that line came from. A Cry in the Dark. So
very nice.
Tragic story. Shouldn't joke about it.
Yeah, but iconic Seinfeld line though.
Yeah,
no denying.
See,
that.
like that's an edgy joke.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I guess Jerry is capable of going there.
Yeah. Yep. Well, as always, Sam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, to everyone listening, thank you for listening. And make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows. Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by Tiny and myself, hosted by new father Tiny and myself. He just had a baby. So congratulations to Tiny. We'll talk more about that in future episodes when he comes back. But that is at towerjunkiespod.com. And also check out my solo podcast, Anthology, where I've begun reviewing season 4 of The Twilight Zone. So that is all where you can find everything. Also check the show notes for timestamps and for links. Oh, God. Until next time, or I should say next time on the show, I'm going to be reviewing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and something else. Until then, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. This weird way that the movie kind of emphasizes the meta, like some meta humor. It's kind of a force-fed meta humor kind of piece of comedy in it. Like there's references to like, oh, we need to fix the third act problem. We need to figure out like what to do in the third act. We're having third act issues. Like it's repeated over and over again. And then there is like a split screen sequence where Emily Blunt's character is talking to Ryan Gosling and saying like, I'm thinking about doing a split screen scene, and then it turns into a split screen scene as they're on the phone together, and it's very low effort in terms of that kind of like, oh, look at us, we're making a movie, this is the type of movie that we're making, and it doesn't really lean too hard into the meta comedy aspect of it, like not nearly enough as enough as the emphasis on those meta scenes would warrant it to. What I mean by that, that's a word salad, is basically... Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See this episode's show notes for our unique promo code to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn when you sign up for a new account. Get your show on Apple and Spotify, get helpful stats, and all the support you need to sound your very best.